Hey guys, I'm Mnar Muhawesh for Mint Press News' Behind the Headline. It's been pretty hard not to notice those pesky waves of TV ads and political talking heads opposing the Iran nuclear deal as they clog up the airwaves. Well, that's because it's a campaign that has been carefully crafted and organized by the Israeli and Saudi lobbies, and money's no object. Both Israel and Saudi Arabia are spending upwards of $60 million on a media campaign to sway public opinion about the Iran deal and spread fear about the Islamic Republic. And the media circus has been quick to hop on board, from accusations that the deal is equivalent to sponsoring terrorism to notions that it gives Iran more nuclear capabilities that it'll use to annihilate Israel and America. The media is flat out lying to the public. But the truth is, Iran was never building a nuclear weapon. Now, despite each year since 1996 of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu crying wolf that Iran is just a few months away from obtaining that bomb, with no mention, of course, of Israel's own 80 nuclear warheads, spy cables leaked earlier this year to The Guardian revealed that Israel's very own intelligence agency, the Mossad, and the CIA both admitted that not only is Iran not performing the activity necessary to produce weapons now, it wasn't in the past either. So why would much of Congress be so vocal about stopping this deal? Well, Open Secrets also revealed that the Israeli lobby spent big in the 2014 election cycle to sway politicians, funneling $6.5 million to Democrats and $5 million to Republicans in the lead-up to the peaceful negotiations with Iran. Now, it's conceivable that most of Congress hasn't even read the deal. They're basing their opposition on that special interest money they're receiving. Now, joining me to discuss the deal as it's written is journalist and Middle East geopolitical analyst for RT is Sharmine Narwani, who attended the Iran nuclear talks in Geneva. Unlike our politicians, she actually read all 160 pages of the deal, line by painstakingly negotiated line. She explains that all this fear-mongering is just a red herring to prevent any boost to Iran's economy, because you see, what the media won't tell you is that Iran is on its way to becoming an economic and manufacturing superpower in the Middle East, which threatens none other than Israel and Saudi Arabia's bought influence on U.S. politics and foreign relations. Take a look. Thank you so much, Sharmine, for joining me today. It's amazing that you actually had the privilege of being at the Geneva talks yourself. What do you think is the most overlooked aspect of the Iran deal that the media is continuously keeping the public in the dark about?
Well, I think it depends on which media you're speaking about. If we're talking about American media, there's an awful lot. I think the discourse dominating has become, is bordering on ridiculous, because it's not actually addressing anything factual about not just the talks, but the lead-up of the talks and the reason behind the long-standing dispute between Iran and various members of the international community on its nuclear program. So, for starters, there are certainly aspects of the deals that we can talk about in detail. For instance, issues that have potential military dimensions. Those are skirted over by the media in ways that sound advantageous to the U.S. side. But overall, I think, we have to look at what this is about. Iran's never had nuclear weapons. It's never sought nuclear weapons. All intelligence assessments by the U.S. intelligence community have assessed that Iran has not even made the decision to seek nuclear weapons. And every IAEA report since the inception of inspections has determined that there is no diversion of Iran's peaceful nuclear activities to a nuclear weapons program. Iran's a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's a member state. It participates as the United States does in interactions with the organization. And, it's been, this country has been under the most intrusive inspections regime of any country in the history of the IAEA for the better part of a decade. So, it has 24-hour surveillance in all its nuclear facilities. Nothing gets by the international community, and Iran has participated in opening up its nuclear program to this kind of scrutiny. We're acting as though we're entering a new stage. Iran's never had inspections. But furthermore, Iran's never threatened to attack the United States. So a lot of the discourse I think we're hearing is symptomatic of what we see of U.S. coverage regarding the Middle East in general. It's very, very short on facts.
And you make a very good point, is that, a lot of the rhetoric has been more fear-mongering, and, even more worrying is warmongering. There's an old saying that goes, follow the money. And in this Iran deal, it's actually no different. I want you to explain how this deal is really more about economics more than anything, despite all of this fear-mongering and warmongering propaganda.
Well, the punitive tool that was used against Iran for pursuing its civilian nuclear program was primarily sanctions. And in the last few years, those sanctions have ratcheted up considerably. But, to sanction Iran, a country of 78 million people that are, largely educated and, have a major natural resource like oil and gas, that, provides it with capital to spend at a time where there's global economic recession pretty much everywhere, has been counterproductive for Western countries that have led the sanctions. So, there are many reasons why Iran and the P5+1 sat across the table in Vienna and have spent 18 months negotiating. There's the issue of terrorism and the Islamic State, but certainly as Western countries have their bottom lines have suffered in the last few years. Iran poses or is potentially a very lucrative market for European countries, the United States, Canada, et cetera, to enter. And as we can see, literally upon the signing of this deal, you had foreign ministers from various states rushing over to Iran to plug their companies for future deals, whether in the energy sector or just across the board. And so actually, if you look at the Vienna deal, and I have a copy, I've showed you before, it's quite a thick document, 159 pages. A substantial chunk of it is just listing companies and enterprises which will now be struck off the sanctions list, allowing Iran to trade with Western countries and other countries in sort of commodities, energy, automotive industry, aircraft, things that have not taken place for quite a number of years. So yeah, there was an absolute economic aspect of this, but I think the focus tends to be in the media on the political dimensions.
And how does this economic, perspective pose a challenge to competing regional powers in the region, like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Arab states, even Turkey and Israel, who are all, very opposed to this deal? Well,
economy brings with it political power. So these two things are not unrelated. If you're doing deals with major manufacturers in a country, and major corporations who have the ear of government, you hold more political sway. And there is that concern, certainly, within various adversarial states in the Middle East about Iran getting a leg up, and not just obviously in economically, but as their economies are flailing, but politically. So there's an absolute correlation with the economy and the political ramifications of this deal.
And now we have nearly every presidential candidate, with the exception, of course, of alternative parties like the Green Party, who have said that they're going to overturn this Iran deal and they're going to, bring back sanctions to Iran. Do you think that the next presidential election campaign will affect the Iran deal?
I think what candidates say is very different than what they often do when they come into office. So I think we need to take those kind of statements with a pinch of salt. On one hand, I want to say, who cares? Because one of the benefits of the deal for Iran, and this does worry a number of Americans, is that this deal, I mean, immediately you had a UN Security Council resolution passed that sets into motion a number of things. And once Iran, in the next very short few months, comes up with, with the goods, then all kinds of things happen, including the removal of 7 prior UN Security Council resolutions that remove a slew of sanctions and a slew of punitive measures against Iran. And, is that reversible? It's harder to reverse something like this than to do it in the first place, and it took a long time for the U.S. to get everyone on board to do these things. Further to that, the U.S. will then have to take measures domestically to either pull back some of the unilateral sanctions or create ways to go around them. And there are a number of things that will be set in motion, and I think any president that comes in is going to have a very, very difficult time to roll these things back. And this has always been what a number of sort of neocons and sort of pro-Israel types have worried about, that once these things are set in motion, it becomes very, very difficult to reverse them. And Iran well knows this. It doesn't particularly care what the United States thinks, because at this point, with the UN Security Council resolution, you have the global sanctions are removed. Okay, so unilaterally the U.S. can do what it wants, and an incoming U.S. president can do what he wants or she wants. But I think the UN Security Council resolutions makes this a binding commitment by all member states. So it doesn't really matter what the next U.S. president does, except for Americans, I think, because if a incoming U.S. president reverses this decision, this momentous, historic commitment between nations, I think it will create the impression of a rogue power unwilling to participate within a system of international consensus.
And, speaking on that line, Iran, there's a lot of Iranophobia that's been happening in the last, especially in the last 5 years, I would say, in the media, more than ever that I've actually noticed. And a lot of rhetoric has been pushed that, Iran is anti-Israel. It's an exporter of terrorism by supporting groups like Hezbollah. And one of the biggest criticisms that it's had against it is that it's support for the Assad government. And I'm just wondering, what is Iran's true ambitions for the region? We hear it every single day. They have proxies everywhere, and they're trying to spread their Shiite ideology. What is it that Iran wants for the region?
The Iranians have been very forthcoming in stating their ambitions, and their ambitions throughout this regime of sanctions imposed on the country has been, we want to have the right to enjoy our sovereign status and protect our territorial integrity and participate as a nation among nations. We want the right to explore our hegemony in our own neighborhood, as all states do. And I think this is something really important when we look at the proxy issue, for instance. Iran is a state like all others. It wants to be able to grow its economy, protect itself. So if, the proxies that people worry about are just an extension of Iran's foreign policy. All states have foreign policy. All foreign ministries or the State Department have relationships with other countries that are based on common economic visions, common political outlooks. These so-called proxies are just allies, in effect, okay? And allies provide any nation state with strategic depth, whether in their neighborhood or beyond. So, if you don't want Iran to enjoy alliances, why should any other state? We talk about Iran in terms that seem to suggest that Iran is exceptional in some way, that Iran should have exceptional punishment levied against it, that Iran should act exceptionally, behaviors that we don't expect from other states, behaviors that we don't expect from our own governments. So, I think it's all rhetoric, and once the deal goes through and sanctions are removed and slowly Iran inches forward in its normalization, the new Iran, and the vilification stops or recedes somewhat, we're going to view Iran's behaviors as we would any other state. It's just a matter of getting out from under the cloud, the narratives that have been imposed on Iran for a number of years now.
Well, and we're all definitely hoping for peace and for this, very hawkish rhetoric to end, because it's taking a toll on people's understanding and perspective of world issues, and even the Middle East, because it's so dehumanizing to the victims of our wars and sanctions. Thank you so much, Sharmine, for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Hope to have you on again. Thank you.
My pleasure, Mnar. Thank you for having me.